Hi, Alexandra speaking. In this video, I'll be talking about interesting ways to describe characters physically, with lots of examples from some popular authors. I hope this video helps you make your physical descriptions more interesting. Describing characters. Physical descriptions. Let's learn from these 7 great examples. Everyone wants their characters to stand out visually, for them to be memorable. You want them to feel unique, and for your readers to be able to see them in their mind's eye. This video will go through which pitfalls to avoid, as well as recommendations accompanied by examples from some fantastic authors. What to avoid. I have never been a fan of character checklists and subjective descriptors. Just listing off, she had long brown hair, brown eyes, a round face and a slender figure might feel efficient and straightforward, but it's boring to read. Adding in pretty adjectives like lustrous or tranquil or handsome are not enough to make a description like this interesting either. Instead, a complete do-over is in order. The best descriptions do more than just describe what is there physically. They enrich the plot, deepen internal characterization, or add flair. The very best descriptions do a mixture of all 3. Let's investigate the writing of some popular authors to learn what we should be doing. She has bright dark eyes and satiny brown skin, and stands tilted up on her toes, with arms slightly extended to her sides, as if ready to take wing the slightest sound. Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games. Here Collins describes the side character Rue in a way that doesn't differ much from the boring old list I told you to avoid, but her use of simile at the end makes things interesting. Rue is compared to a bird, which makes this description more evocative through the use of figurative language. On top of this, Rue is not static during this sentence, and her particular pose is described too. If describing characters bores you to death, learning from Collins' more creative perspective could be a straightforward way to make your descriptions pop. He had his head in his hands, and his tie looked like it had been put on by an enemy and was strangling him. Caitlin Moran, How to Build a Girl. In this descriptor, Moran takes a humorous approach to describing one of her character's outfits. She could have written, his tie looked too tight and very uncomfortable, which is technically the same thing, but it would have been nowhere near as evocative. Instead, she's given the item of clothing a personality and pitted the tie against its wearer. Using a similar technique, but sparingly, in your own writing could make your scenes and characters more comical. The face of Elrond was ageless, neither old nor young, though in it was written the memory of many things, both glad and sorrowful. His hair was dark as the shadows of twilight, and upon it was set a circlet of silver. His eyes were grey as a clear evening, and in them was a light like the light of stars. J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Tolkien, differing from the previous 2 writers, enjoys milking his descriptions. He starts off by describing how old Elrond appears by playing with dichotomies. Elrond is neither old nor young, and both glad and sorrowful. This makes Elrond appear otherworldly, which is fitting as he is an elf. Then Tolkien uses similes to describe Elrond's eye and hair colour, all of which refer to different times of the day. This also plays into Elrond's agelessness and ethereal appearance. Studying how Tolkien describes his non-human characters could be extremely helpful for fantasy and sci-fi writers who want to give their non-human characters an unearthlier feeling. Her skin was a rich black that would have peeled like a plum if snagged, but then no one would have thought of getting close enough to miss flowers to ruffle her dress, let alone snag her skin. Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Through this sumptuous sentence, Angelou melds together a description of Miss Flowers' complexion and her personality. She likens Mrs. Flowers to a plum, something sweet, soft, and tender, which makes her appear very attractive. Then Angelou describes her as being physically distant or even irritable, contrasting with her appearance. If any of your characters have personalities that contradict with their appearance, playing them off against each other can make them both more interesting. Inside the floating cloak he was tall, thin, and bony, and his hair was red beneath the black cap. His face was crumpled and freckled and ugly without silliness. William Golding, Lord of the Flies. Jack, the character Golding is describing, is the book's antagonist, but he isn't portrayed as ridiculously nefarious. His description isn't very complimentary, though it doesn't immediately make you picture Jack as a villain. Golding describing Jack as bony and thin actually makes him look frail. Having the reader initially underestimate Jack makes the things he does later on all the more shocking. Don't be afraid of giving your story's antagonist a more unassuming description. It may end up creating more tension in the long run. I vividly remembered the flat black colour of his eyes the last time he glared at me. The colour was striking against the background of his pale skin and his auburn hair. Today his eyes were a completely different colour, a strange ochre, darker than butterscotch, but with the same golden tone. Stephanie Meyer, Twilight. You might think that when describing your character's love interest, that you'll need to dip your toes into purple prose and use countless synonyms for words like handsome, beautiful, and stunning. Stephanie Meyer proves that isn't the case. Through showing how fixated Bella, the narrator and protagonist, is on Edward's eye colour, Meyer communicates how attracted Bella is to him, as well as describing his appearance. If your protagonist/narrator has a love interest, is there a part of their appearance or personality that they could be enthralled by? And there was Dalinar, standing tall, somehow taller than any man in the room. He wasn't drunk yet, and people orbited him like they might a fire on a cold night, needing to be close, but fearing the true heat of his presence. Brandon Sanderson, Rhythm of War. During this section, Brandon Sanderson focuses on how Dalinar takes up space within a room and his effect on the people around him. He is said to be taller than any man in the room, and that people orbit and fear him, which creates the image of an imposing figure. The simile of a flame also describes his innate charisma and violent past simultaneously. The use of comparison and the reactions of others gives us a more detached view of Dalinar, which makes the portrayal even more compelling. If this was written in first person, and Dalinar was comparing himself to a flame, the effect would be lost, and we would be less likely to see this description as accurate. So when describing your characters, consider how the perspective the description is being given from could affect how it is taken. I hope these examples have helped you think of some creative ways to level up the physical descriptions of your characters. If you want to learn more, and these examples didn't quite do it for you, I recommend you crack open one of your favourite books and see if you can find any inspiring descriptions there. Want more? For more videos on writing advice, subscribe to my YouTube channel. For more content in general, check out my website, Alexandra. And if this video entertained you in the slightest, consider giving it a like, just for fun.